guys, it's Angelo, and welcome to my Discipline Priest guide for Battle for Azeroth's patch 8.3. As a lot of you have seen from my previous video, there are quite a few changes coming to the Disc Priest in Battle for Azeroth's newest patch, as well as a lot of overall gameplay changes and updates, including of course a new raid and tons of other things to do. The Disc Priest actually fits well into the new meta of the game, even though some of the spec's damage capabilities have been reduced. To compensate for this, in terms of healing however, the healing effectiveness through our mastery and through penance have been strengthened, but overall I do think that we can consider the recent disc changes a slight nerf. In this guide, as with all of my guides, we'll go over what has changed for the Disc Priest since patch 8.2, and we'll talk about how the recent nerfs have impacted the spec. After that, we'll be discussing our stat priority, our talents and which ones to pick in certain situations, our rotation and healing priorities, and finally the overall pros and cons of the spec. Now, if you want to check out the previous video about the disc changes, then you can do so now or after this video. The link should appear on the top right side of your screen now. And if you want a more detailed dive into our rotation than shown in this guide, be sure to check out the Disc Priest rotation video, which should also appear on screen and can be found in the description box below. If you wish to discuss anything Priest or World of Warcraft related with fellow viewers or myself over on Discord, be sure to hit the link in the description below to join the server. Now, that being said, and without any further ado, let's go right ahead and have a look. Now, as said before, there are quite a few changes for the Disc Priest coming into patch 8.3. But fortunately for us, there are no real gameplay changes coming which would potentially affect the way you essentially play. On screen now, you'll see a detailed list of the changes. As you can see, they're all simply changes to our effectiveness and strength. While the damage has been reduced pretty significantly for some of our strongest abilities like Shadow Word Pain or Purge the Wicked of Spect, the developers tried to compensate for the consequences this will have for your healing by buffing your mastery as well as buffing the use of penance. Overall, this still means that a slight nerf to our healing is the end result, but that should not be overly noticeable. If you want a full rundown and my exact thoughts on these changes, be sure to check out the Disc Priest changes video, but for now, let's move on and take a look at our stat priority. When it comes to our stat priority, nothing has really changed for the disc. Ultimately, the value of item level will prove to be strongest most of the time, but your overall stat priorities will remain the same. Haste is just about equal in value to Critical Strike, followed by Versatility and then Mastery. Again, it needs to be said that in most cases the gear with the better item level will be the gear you'll be going for, so only follow this stat priority if you're trying to pick between items with the same item level. Accordingly, however, when it comes to your enchantments and your sockets, you'll want to go for Haste. This means that you'll want to socket your one big intellect socket, which is the Leviathan's Eye, and then go for one small intellect socket, which is the Kraken's Eye, and if you have any socket slots left, haste gems should be used to fill them. For your enchantments, you'll be going with Greater Accords of Haste, optionally Critical Strike, and for your weapon you should be going with the Machinist's Brilliance. Try your best to stick to these rules when considering items and stats, and you'll turn out just fine in both Mythic Plus and raids. Next up, we'll be taking a look at our talents and which ones to pick in various situations. When it comes to the talents for the disc, these have always been highly situational, and that hasn't changed with patch 8.3. All in all, your talent choices will remain the same as they had been in patch 8.2. In your level 15 talent row, Schism will be your go-to talent as it provides the strongest healing and damage output in its windows of effect, while Twist of Fate can be strong in a Mythic Plus environment, but highly dependent on the situation. In your level 30 talent row, Angelic Feathers is definitely strongest as it provides the highest mobility for both you and your group. For your level 45 talent row, you'll most certainly be going with Power Word Solace, as it provides the most mana as well as the best damage due to its low cooldown. Other options in this tier are simply not as viable, so you'll be going with Power Word Solace in pretty much any situation you could possibly encounter. The level 60 talent row is entirely up to you, but Psychic Voice and Shining Force is what you'll be using mostly. In your level 75 talent row, you'll be seeing a bit more diversity, as Sins of the Many providing a strong damage increase and therefore a healing increase, and it's strongest when the incoming damage patterns are predictable and remain relatively equal throughout your encounter. Shadow Covenant is strong in the opposite situation, providing an excellent heal in unpredictable situations where the incoming damage fluctuates and needs to be dealt with quickly. In your level 90 talent row, all 3 talents can see use, however, Purge the Wicked and Halo will be your most frequent options. Halo can be considered a very small raid cooldown, and shines when there is damage coming in which affects the entire raid. Purge the Wicked is a constant damage and healing increase, on the other hand, and is therefore a lot more versatile than Halo, and of course is not on a cooldown. Finally, we have our level 100 talent row with Lenience, Luminous Barrier, and Evangelism. All 3 talents can be strong in their own right, where Lenience is best in Mythic Plus, and where the group size of course is limited to 5. Evangelism on the other hand is superior in raids, where the groups are big and where it can support you by extending the duration of your atonement on all affected players. Luminous Barrier has seen its use previously for bosses to mitigate certain strong boss mechanics, and can be especially strong during encounters where the raid gets no heal and can only benefit from absorption effects, similar to the first boss in the Crucible of Storms, the Restless Cabal. Again, we see no overall changes to the talents we would have picked in patch 8.2, but if you stick to these talent choices, you should be able to handle any situation thrown at you in both Ny'alotha and Mythic Plus. Next up, let's take a look at our rotation and our healing priorities and see how those will work in patch 8.3. Before we start, please keep in mind that a healer's spell priority or rotation highly depends on the circumstances. This list should not serve as your set-in-stone or commandment rules for the Discipline Priest, but instead should be your guideline through different situations and encounters. If you want a detailed, step-by-step explanation of when to use specific cooldowns, how to prepare a raid for a lot of incoming damage, or how to heal mana efficiently without sacrificing your output or your throughput, be sure to check out my Discipline Priest healing rotation video, where I go into detail with all of these topics even further. Now, of course, that being said, the Discipline Priest's goal to being successful at healing is to deal a lot of damage, while maintaining different active abilities on your allies. This idea has not seen any changes in patch 8.3, so the essence of the spec will remain exactly the same. As you probably already know when watching this guide, dealing damage for the Discipline Priest essentially boils down to 4 things, talents of course not included: Shadow Word Pain, Smite, Penance, and, though pretty much only used in combination with its according Azerite trait, Holy Nova. What should help you tremendously is if you don't view your damage abilities as, well, damaging abilities, but much more as your healing abilities. Whenever you apply Atonement to a target, which in turn is done by using Power Word Shield, Shadow Mend, or Power Word Radiance, your damaging abilities heal those affected targets for 60% of the damage dealt, and this healing effect of course increases with your Mastery, Grace. Patch 8.3 increases the effectiveness of your Mastery, meaning that you will convert more damage into healing. What this boils down to is that you will want to try and spread your Atonement, and then of course just deal damage, and of course as much as you can. For single target healing, Shadow Mend is your strongest Atonement applying spell for all allies and for general purposes, while Power Word Shield should be kept on cooldown on tanks, and especially in Mythic Plus, and should be used preemptively on group members if heavier damage will be coming in. Power Word Radiance is very important in a raiding environment, but also very effective in Mythic Plus, especially when you expect your entire group to be taking damage and need to respond to that incoming damage rather quickly. Since the disc is highly reliant on effective cooldown use and is not the best single target healer, your go-to emergency button is Shadow Mend, when other spells which could save someone's life as a tank like Pain Suppression, Power Word Barrier or Rapture are on cooldown. Now, Shadow Mend is also great if a group member needs to simultaneously be healed as well as receive atonement, in order to benefit from the damage you deal. A well-constructed balance of your atonement applying effects is important, and you should try and maintain your atonement on as many targets as possible, whenever you're expecting damage to come in. The key here though is to apply your atonement preemptively, meaning you want to spread it before the damage has happened if possible. This is important because the Discipline Priest is not so much a responsive healer as, of course, we know at this point he is a proactive healer. Okay, before we end this video, let's discuss the overall pros and cons of the spec, especially when looking into patch 8.3. To be honest, the Discipline Priest looks to be quite strong once more in Ny'alotha, the Waking City. Though suffering from nerfs, we still do what we excel at incredibly well, which is strong group healing in bursts, high overall damage mitigation, while also dealing a lot of damage throughout the course of the encounter. As the Discipline Priest is able to shield players from damage, the spec's absorb capabilities are incredibly important in Ny'alotha and will definitely want to be used by every raid if possible. Whether or not the disc can keep its current position in a Mythic Plus environment remains to be seen, as the nerfs are certainly more hurting when it comes to Mythic Plus. We're still weak at blanket healing for extended periods of time when our burst windows are not up, and we're still not overly strong when it comes to unpredictable damage that requires reactive healing, but those weaknesses are outshined by our strengths, and that will not change in patch 8.3. What do you think? Are you excited to play Disc in patch 8.3? Will you be rerolling, or are you new to the Priest even, perhaps? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, or join the discussion over at Discord. As always, thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to all of my supporters from Patreon and from Discord. If you're new to the channel and would like to remain updated on the future content, feel free to subscribe. Next up will be the Shadow Priest guide for patch 8.3 actually coming out tomorrow, and if you have enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Now, have a good one, my friends, enjoy your time in the Waking City and in the horrific visions, and I will see you all in the next one.